Microsoft. I mean, you probably use their stuff every single day, but have you ever really stopped to think about just how massive this company is? Today, we're going to dig into the core DNA that took a tiny startup and turned it into one of the most powerful empires in history. Let's do it.
Okay, to really get a handle on their size, just look at this number. Microsoft was only the second company in history to be worth over $2 trillion. That's a number so huge it barely even feels real.
And it's not just some abstract valuation. Their actual sales are gigantic. In 2021 alone, they pulled in over $168 billion. But here's the crazy part. That number has more than doubled in just the last 10 years. So their growth isn't slowing down, it's actually speeding up.
So, that brings us to the big question, right? How on earth does this happen? How does a company, started by a couple of friends who saw a magazine cover, balloon into this multi-trillion-dollar global force?
Well, the answer isn't some single secret ingredient. It's actually built on three core pillars, three foundational ideas that have pretty much guided the company for decades and are still fueling its success right now.
So here they are. We're going to break down these three pillars. First, this relentless, almost ruthless need to win. Second, a surprisingly cautious financial backbone. And third, this very deliberate strategy of building a huge, diverse empire.
Let's dive into that first pillar, the one that really shaped Microsoft's early reputation. This is the story of a company that has always been willing to fight tooth and nail and often get into some controversy to completely own every market it decides to enter.
And you know, there is no better example of this than the deal that basically put them on the map. We got to go back to 1980. IBM, the absolute titan of the industry, needed an operating system for its new personal computer. And this one deal, well, it would change tech history forever.
So here's how it all went down. The market leader back then, a company called Digital Research, just couldn't seal the deal with IBM. A young Bill Gates saw his chance. Microsoft just swooped right in, promising IBM an operating system, one they didn't actually have. So they scrambled, quickly bought a similar OS from another small company, slapped the name MS-DOS on it, and licensed it to IBM. When the IBM PC came out, people had a choice. Buy the original, more expensive OS, or get the cheaper MS-DOS. The choice was a no-brainer, and Microsoft basically crushed the competition overnight. It was an incredibly risky, super aggressive, and wildly successful gamble.
And this aggressive streak just kept going. In the late 80s, Apple sued Microsoft. What was the claim? That Windows 2.0 was a blatant ripoff of their Macintosh OS. Now, Apple had licensed some stuff for the first version of Windows, but they argued this new version went way, way too far. In the end, Microsoft won the lawsuit, but the whole thing just shows you a key part of their playbook. Push every boundary you can, fight like hell in court, and lock down your spot in the market.
But maybe the most legendary example of this aggression was during the browser wars of the 90s. The browser everyone used was Netscape Navigator. So what did Microsoft do? They built their own Internet Explorer, and then they gave it away for free, pre-installed on every single computer that ran Windows. They used their complete dominance in operating systems to just choke out a competitor.
Yeah, that move was so aggressive that it landed them in a massive antitrust lawsuit with the US government. A federal court actually ordered Microsoft to be broken up into two separate companies. Now, they did appeal and that ruling got overturned, but they were still forced to open up their Windows platform to competitors. It was a huge signal. Their win-at-all-costs strategy had pushed them right up to the legal line and maybe a little bit over it.
So we've seen the aggressive risk-taking side of Microsoft, and that brings us to our second pillar, which is kind of the exact opposite. You'd think a company this bold would be just as aggressive with its money, right? But nope. For decades, Microsoft has been built on an incredibly stable, you could even say cautious, financial foundation.
And this way of thinking came straight from the top. Bill Gates had this famous rule. The company always had to have enough cash on hand to run for a full year with absolutely $0 coming in. This wasn't just a nice idea. It was a core principle. It was all about making sure Microsoft could survive pretty much any disaster.
And this frugality could get a little extreme. There's a famous story from when Steve Ballmer was CEO. During a big cost-cutting push, the company actually canceled the free towel service for employees at the campus gym. It was a tiny, tiny saving that of course made everyone angry. They did eventually bring the towels back, but it's the perfect little story to show you just how deep that penny-pinching culture really went.
Okay, so you've got this super aggressive competitor, but it's built on a rock-solid foundation of financial stability. That brings us to our third and final pillar.
using all that stability and cash to build a massive, diverse empire that goes way, way beyond just Windows and Office.
Just take a look at where Microsoft's money comes from today. You can see it's split almost perfectly into 3 huge chunks. But the really important part here is the biggest slice of that pie, Intelligent Cloud. That's right, the company that built its fortune on desktop software is now, more than anything else, a cloud computing giant, all led by their Azure platform.
And a huge piece of this diversification puzzle has been buying other companies. And we are not talking about little startups here. Microsoft has been swallowing giants. They grabbed Skype, then Minecraft, the professional network LinkedIn for an insane $26 billion, the coding platform GitHub, and huge video game studios like Bethesda.
And that brings us to their biggest gamble yet. Over $68 billion to buy Activision Blizzard, the company behind monster franchises like Call of Duty and World of Warcraft. It's one of the biggest tech buyouts in history, and it makes Microsoft an absolute titan in the gaming world overnight. It just goes to show you that aggressive empire-building strategy, it is far from over.
So, let's put it all together. What really makes Microsoft Microsoft? What's the fundamental DNA of this tech giant? Well, it's this powerful mix of these 3 very different pillars.
You've got a company with this fierce, almost obsessive drive to win and totally dominate any market it enters. Then you back up all that aggression with a super conservative and stable financial core. And that financial stability gives them the cash, the firepower to constantly expand their empire, buying their way into totally new worlds like gaming, professional networking, and of course, cloud computing.
It's this really unique cocktail of ruthless aggression and deep-seated caution that has made Microsoft one of the most durable and powerful companies on Earth. And it leaves us with one final big question. When you look at their history, their insane resources, and their endless ambition, what market will this empire decide to conquer next?